Welcome back. This is segment 3 of Citizens Forum being filmed on Tuesday, March the 15th, 2016. Our guest in this segment is John Farquharson. We're going to be talking about sewage treatment here in Victoria. And John, I mean, to me, the story of the last few weeks has been that we've actually had the chance, I think for the first time ever, of doing the right thing environmentally and possibly at a much, much lower cost than has been bandied about. So the story of the last few weeks has actually been one of something very positive maybe happening, although that story hasn't really been told to people of the city by the media. They're pushing out other stories. But you just said you were kind of delighted, which was
well,
nice to
delight's
hear.
maybe too strong a word, but I'm certainly encouraged in the sense of, like you say, it's very fluid. The big challenge that seems to be now beginning to disappear from the table is this notion we'll lose the money if we don't do something, make a decision by March 31st. There seems to be in place a proposal that would be like a placeholder or an interim liquid waste management plan. And placeholder, pardon me, apparently you need a place, a designated place, to hold on to the money. So you need to designate a place. And up until the beginning of last week, the designated place was Rock Bay. Now that has changed to apparently Clover Point and McLaughlin and/or Macaulay Point. And so that's encouraging. And so if the respective governments, the provincial government and the federal government, are okay with that decision, the decision being that we've made a decision, it'll be these two sites unless we can find something better in the next 6-8 months as we go out and really thoroughly canvass the private sector.
Now that sounds great. So it means that finally, after many, many years of this going on,
decades.
Yes, we're actually going to go out and find out what is available on the market to do what it is that we want to do. We've never done that before, as crazy as that sounds.
Well, we haven't. We've done it, but at a very, at a distance. I think the CRD board chair, Barb Desjardins, described it as, we have had these private sector vendors hovering. They've been hovering around this whole development. But what she wants to do is to make sure they have an opportunity to land and to present what they have to offer, attach firm numbers to it, document the environmental benefits involved, and again provide details. The details have never been there before. They've always been very, very large conservative numbers.
Now, none of this ever happened. Instead, we came up with a plan several years ago, and it's only a plan that was going to cost us over $1 billion to build a sewage treatment system that I think would give us zero environmental benefit and probably environmental damage over what we do now.
This was the secondary, centralized secondary at McLaughlin?
Yeah.
Okay.
And luckily it was stopped. So now it seems like we're beginning to do what we should have done in the first place, and that's a wonderful and great thing.
Yeah, what is in...
and hopefully one of them will work.
Yes. I mean, again, if you bring in the private sector and allow them to, again, make their case, bring you their proposals in a thorough kind of way, then that's quite different than just somebody, pardon me, handing you a brochure.
So I want to ask you something, because I went to a couple of meetings sponsored by the CRD on this sewage treatment subject about a month ago, and I picked up a small magazine that they were putting out, and that magazine gave all the options that were available for me as a citizen to vote on. I could choose between those 7 options, and they were going to choose one of them. All of those options involved Rock Bay, and those were the only options on the table. And especially for what was going to happen on Cook Street, with the necessity of putting a pipeline on Cook Street from Dallas Road up to Bay.
2 pipelines.
2 pipelines.
One's going, one coming back.
The impact on the people of that area of the city would have been massive, as well as a $200 million cost, at least, for building. I mean, this was a disaster, and yet that's where we were just a couple of months ago.
Well,
now it seems
that's where we were 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It hasn't been like 2
So
weeks ago.
what happened that suddenly
happened?
stopped that crazy plan?
Because last Wednesday, I mean, it's difficult to tell exactly what happened, but from the outside looking in at the meeting last Wednesday, which would have been the 9th, they were talking to the chair of the technical oversight panel. The technical oversight panel was charged with overseeing the work by Urban Systems, and Urban Systems brought you those 7 options that you referred to in the little booklet that you were supposed to choose from. And at the last minute, she was on conference call. Director Colin Plant from Saanich said, "What about Macaulay and Clover Point? Would they be better options?" And she said, "Better sites." And she said, "Yes, but we didn't know that they were on the table." So in that little exchange there, at the very last minute, Clover Point and Macaulay. So then, what Director Plant did is he, did an amendment to the amendment with respect to the motion on the table, and not so much magically, but very, very astutely, got Macaulay and Clover Point onto the table. Rock Bay sort of got pushed aside, not off the table, but to one side. And so now you have Macaulay you have Clover and Point, and either McLaughlin or Macaulay back as the base case sites.
Now, for Clover Point, I understand it's going to be what they called a deep site or something like that. Is for the people in the neighborhood, would that involve drilling and huge amounts of noise, or through rock, or do you know?
I don't know. I mean, obviously there'd be some disruption during the construction of it. One of the requests by the city, or I guess not so much request, but a demand by the city, is that the residents continue to have access to the walkway that goes around Clover Point during construction. And there's a thing called an amenities package, and there's also a hosting that's given to the municipality that is hosting the facility. And I think it's to more or less recognize there'll be some disruption here. And
but if there's going to be disruption, that has to be taken into account too, because that's a negative. If people have to put up with, we don't know at this point in time if there's
we don't know right now.
Yeah. I wonder. I continue to hope that we end up with the best cost and especially the most environmentally effective system we can.
Well, that was what came forth from the Integrated Resource Management Task Force. Again, at the very last minute, the Integrated Resource Management Task Force was going to report out on the 29th, but the CRD Sewage Committee was going to make its decision on February 24th. 5 days difference. So we besieged the Sewage Committee to can you hold off for a few days? So they held off for 3 days, and the task force moved its reporting out by 2 days. So they all came together on one day. And what they had to offer is encouraging. It's very encouraging because of the substantial financial and environmental benefits that could accrue, including greenhouse gas mitigation.
Okay, let's talk about the financial benefits, because the old plan put forward by the CRD staff over a period of 40 years, let's say, it was going to cost us $1 billion to build and another $1 billion to run. So we're looking at spending $2 billion. What are some of these other numbers?
Well, again, the emphasis now is on sewage treatment, but it's on a bigger picture now. Sewage treatment and resource recovery. And so once you begin to roll resource recovery into the picture, then you have an opportunity to recover some of the costs in terms of revenue generated by extracting resources from the waste products. And so the Integrated Resource Management Task Force began to look at combining solid waste that go into Heartland with the biosolids that are left over after the wastewater is treated, combining them, gasifying them, and extracting this product called syngas, which can generate electricity.
What's the environmental impact of gasification? Do you have any idea, or does anybody
Don't know. What have I heard? I've heard that they are operating in various sites around the world. The one that caught my attention, though, was they have them in California, and I know that California, because of Los Angeles and the amount of car traffic down there, they have very stringent emission standards. And so if you've got a gasification that passes California standards for emissions, I think that's encouraging.
Well, yeah, I mean, to me, that's very important, because I've heard, you mentioned gasification and others, but I think we have to be sure that it's...
Well, the thing, in terms of being sure, that's the encouraging window that's now open. We're going to look at these things.
Yes.
That's the main thing, and thoroughly vet them to be, to make sure.
I mean, we should have been doing all of this 10 years ago. We should have done this 10 years ago, and it's really a disgrace that we didn't. I don't know what the force was that stopped us from doing it, because it made sense from day one to do it, but it never happened. I think it's important that these things be investigated, because if they're not investigated and people held accountable,
Jack,
it goes on and on and on.
This will make for one heck of a case study.
Yeah.
Once it's all over and we've got something done in the next few years, this will make an incredible case study.
Yeah. I want to see the movie.
Yes, see the movie.
John, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
For the update. So there is hope. We've got to make sure that those hopes are what go forward. We've got to do the right and smart thing. Thanks for watching this segment of Citizens Forum.